Founded in Silicon Valley, Startup Grind has now hosted over 2,000 fireside chats since its founding in 2010. And to date, Startup Grind has helped millions of entrepreneurs find mentorship, connect to partners, and pursue funding, and reach new users. So our values are: we believe in making friends, not contacts, giving, not taking, and helping others before helping yourself. Educate, inspire, and connect. So our global sponsors are Google for Entrepreneurs. Google's committed to empowering entrepreneurs around the world through programs, partnerships, and products. Our local sponsors are Asheville Co-working, our host this evening. Asheville Co-working offers working space, networking opportunities, and collaborative environment to growing businesses. The only co-working space in West Asheville community offering affordable and convenient access to remote workers in and around the city. Real Digital Productions will be recording this evening. They specialize in video marketing from concept to post-production and beyond. They're technically savvy, business-minded, and creative through and through. Homegrown food. Homegrown is all about making local food affordable and convenient so that everybody, not just the fabulously wealthy, can enjoy a delicious, healthy meal while supporting our community farmers. And our team, Edwin and Matt, are directing with me this evening. So everyone, our speaker tonight is Justin Belleme. He has been providing web design and online marketing to clients in Asheville area and elsewhere for over 12 years. His specializations are search engine optimization, social media strategy, and online marketing. But he also has experience in online publicity, website design, and online video production and promotion. In 2011, he founded JB Media Group, a full-service online marketing agency. And in 2013, he co-founded the JB Media Institute to teach online marketing skills to businesses and individuals. As of 2016, the companies have grown to include 10 full-time and 3 part-time staff. In June of 2014, Justin was named as Entrepreneur of the Year by the Asheville Chamber of Commerce. And in 2013, JB Media Group was selected as a finalist for the NC Technology Association Fastest Growing Small Company Award. Justin is a 2012 Leadership Asheville graduate, 2015 graduate of Leadership North Carolina, and a 2016 graduate of the High Global Leaders Program. Everyone, please welcome Justin Belleme.
Brian, can I sit here?
Yeah. All right. So, hi, Justin.
Hey, Ryan.
Welcome to Startup Grind.
Thanks.
It's nice to have you speaking this evening.
Thank you.
So we're just going to go over some of the basics about how you got started as a business leader and the development of your company to the point that it's at right now.
Okay.
So the first question, did you have any entrepreneurial experience, like lemonade stand or influences parents growing up that helped influence you?
Yeah, well, my parents are here in the audience. My brother and his wife are here also. So yeah, I got started in entrepreneurship about when I was 8 or 9 years old in Saluda, North Carolina, where I grew up, where my parents still live. And at the time, I had this burning desire to have my own go-kart. And I had, an allowance, a weekly allowance of, I don't know if it was $2 or $5 a week, something in that range. And my parents, they had a specific budget I was allowed to spend, or ask for birthdays and for Christmas. And I was always looking at the Iwana, the local classified magazine, and I was wondering, I was seeing the go-karts and that were between $200 and $400 for a really entry level used go-kart. And I was figuring it out, I would have to either combine 2 major holidays and get just one thing for the year, or I would have to save a lot of money for a really long time in my allowance in order to be able to afford to get my own go-kart. So I don't remember exactly what time of year it was, but I was out with my best friend's house and we were playing with BB guns in his backyard, and we shot a piece of mistletoe out of a tree with a BB gun. And then, I don't know, one of us came up with the concept that maybe people would buy this stuff. So we started climbing trees, cutting it down, bagging it up in little baggies, little clear plastic bags, putting little red ribbons on them, and we took them out we had this open house in, I think, the first or second Saturday in December, where all the businesses would open up and they would have cookies and they'd have hors d'oeuvres and just sort of a Christmas season kickoff in Saluda. And so I took a bag of 50 of these little mistletoe pieces down, and I started selling them actually in the afternoon. And then by the first half an hour of the street festival, I had sold all mine. And I went and found my friend, and he was hanging out with some of his friends, some of our friends behind his parents' bakery, and he had left all of his at the cash register and asked his mom to sell them. And she had sold like 4 or 5 in an hour. So I took the rest of his, and I went back on the street, and I sold them in another hour or less, and then we split the money up. And then the rest of that season, I kind of went solo and sold my own, and had made enough money plus my savings to buy a go-kart within a couple weeks.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great story. So did you continue the mistletoe selling business for a while, or just?
I don't remember exactly what happened with that business after that, but I think Mike's brother did some of it.
Oh yeah.
I think I did it for a few years until like the little kid, cute nature of it kind of wore off. And then my brother was 3 years younger than me, so 3 years later, he could continue the business and do it for a little while. I think I don't remember what my best year was, but maybe 150 or 200 dollars.
That's quite a bit for your first business. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, are there any other educational work experiences that you can hone in on that influenced you to start JB Media?
Yeah, so starting with the mistletoe business, or the mistletoe, whatever you call it, it wasn't really a business, but like a way to make money when I was 8 or 9. All throughout school, I guess I was still homeschooled when I started that business. And then I went into public school in 5th grade, and I think in 6th or 7th grade, I don't remember exactly what year it was, there was a school-wide chocolate bar competition, sales competition. And I entered and won that sales competition. And then in my freshman year of high school, there was a raffle ticket competition, and it was between homerooms. And we had homerooms, like the 9th grade had 5 or 6 homerooms, and it was that many for each class, about 20 kids in each homeroom. We went about 600 kids in my high school. And the homeroom that sold the most raffle tickets was going to get a full day field trip to Charlotte, half a day at museums and half a day at an amusement park. So it was a pretty big deal. I mean, that's for high school kids, that's a pretty big prize. And so I grabbed 100 raffle tickets, said, I'll sell these this week. And I went home and I stood, after I got off the bus, I'd walk down to the Main Street, Saluda, and I stood between the bank and the post office, which was a wheelchair ramp that everyone in the city had to go up or down every single week, to get their mail or their banking. And I would just be really polite, and I'd try to sell people raffle tickets. And when they said no, I'd be really polite and say, oh, well, thank you so much for considering it. And sometimes they would go in, get their mail, and come out and be like, yeah, the way you said thank you, or the way you're so kind, I'll buy one. Or the fact that I was there every single day, they couldn't say no. They would say, I don't have any money today. I'd be like, well, I'll be here tomorrow. Bring some money tomorrow. And so I ended up selling, I think I sold 350 raffle tickets, and only one other homeroom sold more than 350. I also had the football coach's son in my homeroom. So he and his siblings sold them at the football games. So he stood at the gate, like where everyone had to go through for football, and he sold 150 or 200, and between us, we sold over 500. I think the next homeroom was super competitive, trying to keep up with us, but I think they only sold like 400. So, and then we had other kids. We had a girl in our class that whose mother was the receptionist at a really popular medical practice, and she sold quite a few, like 50 or 75. So we did really good with that. And then, so that was like showing me about sales and about customer service to some degree, about being kind to people and how to communicate with people. And then in high school, while I was in high school, I started doing commercial web development work for the company that my parents worked for, and it was a Japanese company. And so I started making good money for a high school kid. I also had a dishwashing job as well, but I was doing side work, sort of freelance work, for one or more companies that my parents were associated with. And what I had done was my middle school technology teacher, who had sort of got me into web development, was doing the website work. And then he got a promotion from Saluda Middle School up to the county school system, and he got too busy to do freelance work anymore, and he sort of told my parents that he couldn't do it anymore, and they didn't have anyone else local to turn to. It was, web development wasn't really that big of a thing, and it's like 97, 98. And he was like, well, Justin could do it. And so I was like, I can do it. And I'll just charge you 90% of what he's charging you. So it was a discount, but it was still a good price. So I made a pretty good amount of money throughout high school and college doing websites or doing basic static websites. And then I think probably in high school, the most formative experience for running a business was yearbook. So I was a track athlete and captain of the track team, but I was also the editor of the yearbook. And that was a process of doing yearbook sophomore year and being the editor of the sports section, and then junior year being the junior class editor and a few other sections, and then senior year being the editor of the yearbook, recruiting like my two best friends. We had a little, the corner of the yearbook classroom. One of them was like the head of sales for the advertising section. He became a sales guy. We were roommates in college. And then my other best friend was like really into design, and he did all the layouts. And I just did a lot of graphic design and a lot of the layouts. And then we had a team of like 20 people that we had to manage. And it was like definitely like politics and people that didn't want to do anything and people that were really effective. And it was interesting because I didn't get to choose the people on the team. I had to work with what I had. And there was the girl who wanted to be editor the next year, who was her little sister, and they were like getting a lot done on the junior stuff and all the side sections. And then I was just like, it was like basically like being a CEO of a 20-person team. And I took it really seriously. And I chose not to take any AP classes because they all conflicted with one of the semesters of yearbook, because I really wanted to do it, and I thought it was good leadership experience for my college resume. And I actually felt like it was, I enjoyed the combination of design, photography, layout, and the role it kind of played in like student life. Like I was really connected to what was happening with all the different social groups because I was building the yearbook. I designed the cover, inside cover,
right.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting it that was like everything up to college, and then I did something similar in college. I led a team in college on a big website project that was similar to the yearbook thing.
Right. So that kind of influenced your role as far as getting into social media?
Well, I mean, when I was in college, I decided to study computer science at UNC Asheville. When I first got to college, I figured I was going to be like my mentors in high school, which were IT people, and I would become a network administrator or an in-house software developer. And at some point in high school, or college, I remember thinking, do I really want to be like those people? They were kind of antisocial. I mean, they weren't very, they were just programming all day long, and they weren't in very good shape. They didn't have very active social lives. I was like, is that really what I'm going to want to become? I could definitely see myself going down a path and getting a job where I sat in a windowless office programming and doing coding all the time, and I just didn't, in my programming heavy classes, I didn't love it. I loved the project management part of it, the sales part of it, the creative part of it, but I didn't love just coding all day. I mean, some people do. People just love it. They can't get enough of it. Mm-hmm. That wasn't me. So I was like, well, maybe I need to do something more entrepreneurial. And so at some point in my college, the summer between sophomore and junior year, I had this idea to start an advertising network for Asheville. And I was doing freelance web development still for my parents. They had started a new company. So I was doing the website for their new company and getting paid monthly to do that. And I've had a few other small website projects I was doing for people and making a little bit of money. That was the only job I had in college. During the school year, I had other jobs in the summer, but just in the school year, that was my only work outside of schooling. So I decided that I was going to start this website, and I shifted the second half of my education entirely focused on the skill sets I would need to run a small publishing company that had digital advertising as the primary way it would make money, but I wanted to be the person who wrote all the code. So I built a basic content management system from the ground up, but I didn't really know how to build one, so I took all the web development classes from one professor. I took 7 classes from the same professor who knew how to do that, and just like I also chose him as my senior project mentor. And actually, he started a digital agency in Raleigh after I graduated, and we did a partnership with JB Media. But while I was in school, I actually chose to take elective classes in computer science and elective classes in management, marketing, and business because I wanted to be prepared to start that business. I realized it was unorthodox to start a startup without funding, without a lot of access to money, right out of school. So I needed to be like good momentum when I got out of school. So I just rearranged all my classes and all my extracurricular activities around.
To give you a head start.
To try to get a head start. The business never made any money, but
right.
I came out of school with like more than just a prototype.
Right. So you wanted to connect to more people and not be so, boxed into an office staring at a computer screen the whole time. Do you feel like now that you've started JB Media, you guys have a lot of windows, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, it's kind of ironic because I graduated in 2005, and my website was not ready for public consumption at that point. And so I took a job doing web marketing for a manufacturing company down on Thompson Street, off Thompson Street near the Biltmore Village, where I worked programming their website and marketing their website in a windowless room for 20 hours a week. And the rest of my time I spent in my friend's basement programming Asheville Now. And then once I convinced that client to let me work from home, I worked 35 to 40 hours a week in the basement of my friend's house, who became my business partner in that business for 35 hours a week for 4.5 years, working on the website. But the goal was to become the CEO of the company and run the sales team and a development team, and it never made it to that level, but that was the goal, and I always thought it was like a lot closer than it really was. Like I thought this next thing was going to be the breakthrough on marketing, the breakthrough on content that was going to get us to where we had enough traffic to start selling ads. I had done a business plan, do Mountain BizWorks. I did their small business course. It's called what's it called now? Bird's Eye, I think. It used to be called Foundations. I did that in 2008, and so we had this like business model canvas for the business that said we needed 100,000 visitors or page views a month, and then we could charge a certain price where we could have a margin for commission, and we could make $100,000 a year, which is enough to pay 2 people a living wage to run the content side and the programming side, and pay a salesperson half-time a living wage, go out and to make $20,000 or $30,000 a year, going out and selling the ads. But until we reached that point, we were not eager to sell ads because we were figuring it would be hard to convince someone to pay more once we've sold them something. So we were taking incoming inquiries a couple a week or a month. I sold in my best year like $5,000 or $6,000, maybe $10,000 in ads. But it was never, I didn't really go out and sell them. They would contact us.
Right.
And I'd tell them, here's our goal. We would like to charge this much next year. We're halfway there. We're going to charge you half. But that pricing that we were at halfway to where our goal wasn't high enough to justify a sales force. And since my goal was the traffic, I didn't want to go out and hit the streets and sell an underpriced product. So I didn't go out and sell. I could have sold it. I could have gone out and sold ads. I could have brought the revenue up to $50,000 or $60,000 a year pretty quickly, but I was real focused on making the site better and making our marketing better. So I was really self-learning about marketing. So I was studying SEO. When I wasn't programming, I was studying SEO, and then once things evolved to social media, I was studying both, and email marketing and Google advertising, and I was doing all those things for my father's company and for a few other small projects, including the company that I was working for when I got out of college. They were still like a retainer freelance client. So I was testing things, various degrees of like aggressiveness I was testing with different clients. And I was really pushing the limit with my website because I kind of didn't have anyone to answer to if I screwed it up. But with the other clients, I was taking a more of a less aggressive approach because I didn't want to get them like blacklisted by Google or anything. So it worked pretty well for certain niche clients I had. And my father's business ranks well and still ranks well for keywords. But my website was competing with this Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Citizen Times, and other big media companies with big budgets. And I could never, despite my effort, I could never quite break through.
Right. And so you started investing more time in social media, and it did kind of snowball into JB Media? Is that?
Yeah, so I worked head down for 2006, 7, and 8, full time on the site, putting in close to 2,000 hours a year on the website, reinvesting every dollar that came in from that business back into the business. I had rent-free, working with my business partner. He was putting in the same amount of hours as me. Neither of us were getting paid. We were putting a lot of effort, but he got burned out. We were both really burned out, but he got burned out. He was more vocal about it, and he's like, I can't do this anymore. He was even more, he's a lot more extroverted than I am. I could stand kind of working in the basement. It was with me and him. He needed more social engagement, so he's like, I'm gonna go back to school. I'm gonna get a physical therapy degree and try that path. And so he went back to school the beginning of middle 2008. I was like, I'm gonna give it another year on my own or two to see if I can make it go. And so I kept working on it, and about a year after that, 2009, I came to the conclusion that this is not going to work, and I kind of had a little bit of an existential crisis because I'd put so much energy and time into it. I remember a conversation with my mom when it was like right around my birthday, 2009, where I was like, I think I need to give up on this. I think I need to give up, and it was so much sunk cost, like so much time that I put into it, and I was like, I'm never going to get that time back. You know, I always thought I was like 6 months away from it being big enough to do what I wanted to do with it, and it never got there. So, but I never thought it was like impossible. Even at the end, I didn't think it was impossible. I just thought I needed to figure out the right combination of keywords and the right combination of other things. But I was like, I need to stop. And so, but right before I stopped, I launched a Facebook page called Asheville, and in June of 2009, and it took off and went viral. I took a picture that my brother took of downtown. I posted it on Facebook, created a business page before very many businesses had a page, and I invited I had 800 Facebook friends. I invited like 2/3 of them, because they were mostly local, to like the page, but I didn't even like the page at first. I didn't want people to know it was me. So this is before Facebook advertising, and they were testing ads. So what they were doing is they were showing people pages that their friends liked, and where the ads now appear. And people could like the page without even knowing who was behind it. It just said, do you like Asheville? And its beautiful downtown skyline. And everyone's like, of course I like Asheville. Click, click, click. It was going by 300 people a day for 3 months. So it was at 12,000 fans. And I passed I think the Grove Park Inn had about 12,000 fans at the time. Biltmore had like 15 or 16,000. Asheville CVB didn't have a page. None of the major businesses in town, other than those two big tourism businesses, had anything. I passed those pages or caught up with them, and then I was posting things. I was randomly rotating between the Citizen Times, Mountain Express, a couple of bloggers that I was friends with, like Gordon Smith before he was a city council member. He was a blogger. He was called Scrutiny Hooligans. And his Scrutiny Hooligans blog did an article. Do you remember when the off-duty Asheville Fire Department officer shot a handgun at the guy riding a bike in Biltmore Village and shot through his helmet? No. Well, he wrote an article about that, and I took it and I posted it on my Facebook page, which had 12,000 people, and it got hundreds of shares and hundreds of really pointed comments. And then I emailed Gordon and I said, hey Gordon, how many visits did you get from Facebook yesterday? And he said 700. And I was like, how many do you normally get? He said 50. It's like, all right, so I sent you 650 visits in one day. That's worth something, even though that was a very active story. But I was also doing like writing journalism on my site, publishing it to Facebook on my page, and driving 200 people average. So if I did that 10 times a month, I was driving an extra 3,000 or 4,000 visitors a month to my site, and that was 25% of my traffic or something at the time. So I figured if that could grow to 100,000 fans, which was on the trajectory to do, then that might be all I needed. I could just post a lot of stuff on Facebook. There's plenty of media companies like BuzzFeed that make most of their traffic comes from Facebook. And this was way before that was a thing. But I was like, maybe I can do that. But also that established me as a Facebook expert, so to speak, in the local community, because I had done that. I had developed that, launched that. It was successful, even though it was kind of luck and timing. But that got me in front of, like that exact page got me in front of the city of Asheville that fall. And they ended up hiring me the following February to do a social media strategy for the city of Asheville. And that was basically when I stepped back from Asheville Now. That spring, I'd pretty much made up my mind to like approach consulting as my full-time gig in May of 2009. And then by the next spring, I had one big client. And when that project ended in June, I orchestrated that project so that I would have a press conference, or it wasn't really a press conference, but it was a media roundtable what I also invited the social media experts from all the big corporations, all the big bloggers. It's about 65 people in City Council in this in 9th floor HR conference room in City Hall. And so I presented 15 minutes, like, here's the strategy I created for the city of Asheville, and here's how they're going to engage community on social media. And then let's talk about these different constituent audiences, how it affects you. How does that affect Ash Vegas and Citizen Times and Mountain Express? How does that affect companies that want to get information to and from the city? And so there was a conversation, a very heated conversation, but the room was full of consultants, marketing companies, marketing agencies, AVL Marketing was in the room. Yeah. And a lot of them ended up consulting with me, bringing me in for consulting over that next 6 months. And that led me to decide to start JB Media.
Nice. Well, you kind of already led into my next question with talking about Asheville now and the hardships, wanting, dropping the ball. And what were some other hardships and tough experiences that you had to go through in order to get your company where it's at today?
Well, prior to JB Media, the biggest hardship was working as hard as I was on Asheville Now and making like less than $15,000 a year for 4 years in a row after out of college, and trying to survive in Asheville on that kind of income. Asheville was much more affordable back then. I mean, I was renting a room from a friend for $200 a month for a good part of it, or living with my girlfriend at the time, splitting the bills and coming up short on my half every month, and going farther and farther into debt with her for a long time. But that was like when I graduated from college, I had over $10,000 in the bank, and it was when that number got to zero in the spring of 2009 when I was like, I can't do this much longer. So that's sort of the impetus to start consulting. And then by the 18 months later, I was consulting full time, and I was making almost 80 hours a week of consulting by the fall of 2009, or 2010, excuse me. And I was making an average of $20 an hour on 80 hours of work a week, or more, 25. I was making a good amount of money, but I felt like I was capped and maxed out. I couldn't work any more hours. Most of my clients wanted more of my time. There were projects I wanted to work on that I couldn't fit in. And I'd saved up, because I was used to living with such a meager income, that I was saving all that money. So I had saved back up to $15,000 or $17,000 in just a matter of 4 or 5 months. And I was like, and 4 of my clients offered me full-time jobs that paid about $40,000 to $60,000 a year. And some of them were tempting, but none of them were as exciting to me as trying to see if I could capitalize on the momentum of my consulting business. So I decided to start an agency, and it was 2011, I decided October 2010, and I went through my Facebook feed, or my Facebook friends list, and I said, how many talented underemployed people do I know in Asheville? And the answer was 40. Because it was still the recession. It was still there were people with PR degrees that had good internships in DC and Boston and other places that I knew who were working at the bistro at Biltmore, or that were freelancing and barely cobbling together an income.
It's still going on today.
It's still happening now. Yeah. But I saw an opportunity, with specific friends. I made a vision board in 2010. I came up with this is what we'll do. Here's who I might hire to do it, and this is a list of people. And I mean, we recently brought Kristen on board. She was on my original list of people, potential. She was still in school at the time. My former business partner was on the list. I mean, of all the people on the list, I was able to hire 5 or 6 or 7 over the course of the years. Most of the people who are now work for JB Media weren't on the list. I just came to know them through other channels and found a fit. But I did this vision board with all the things I wanted to do service-wise or offer, which hasn't changed very much in terms of what they're called. Actually, how you do them has changed a lot, but what they're called is sort of similar. And then listed mentors and advisors that I wanted to have their ear if I could, if they would be willing to do that. And then potential company names for my company, and then a list of potential clients in the market. And And then I just started got started on that process. I got a business coach who was one of my mentors. I hired a business coach, and I started creating the business plan and the sales strategy and everything like that.
Nice. If there was some advice that you'd give to yourself early on when you just started the company, what would it be?
You mean if I was looking back at myself when I started and going back in time, what advice would I give myself?
Yeah. What advice would you give yourself?
Well, I feel fortunate that I surrounded myself with a lot of mentors from the very beginning. And every time I had this anxious feeling or pit in my stomach or anxiety that I didn't know what to do, I would call on one of them or more of them. And I would get 3 or 4 opinions, and I would compare them to my values and my politics and say, what do I want to do with my company right now? So I feel like I don't know. Oh, I know how I got that advice. I got that advice from a guy named John Colburn, who is a founder of a summer camp that I work for up in Philadelphia. And I talked to him when I was right after I had this existential crisis with Asheville Now. I said, Asheville Now had this core philosophy. It was build it and they will come. We're going to build the best website for Asheville and people will come. It didn't work. And I spent tons of time trying to figure out how to get the site in front of the right people. So I talked to John, and he's like, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. You should have been spending 20 hours a week for the last 6 months networking or a year networking versus holding up in the basement. And I was very introverted. I didn't really like to talk to people. I figured that would be my business partner's role because he was extroverted and had sales experience. He would go out and beat down the doors when the time was right. And we were both very perfectionistic about the product. It was never good enough. So we were going to keep working on it versus going out and selling it, which in retrospect, I'm glad I did, because I'm glad I started JB Media, because we could have made a functional business out of Asheville Now. Yeah. But when I met with John, I met him the first time in 2009, I hung out with him again in 2010, right before I started JB Media. It stuck with me, mentors and networking. And so I kind of combined those two things, and I tapped my network for mentors and my network for sales leads. And that's been supporting the company up until recently, that mentors have helped me make good decisions. In 2012, I joined a local business coaching group called TAB, the Alternative Board. It's kind of like Vistage or EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, where you pay a monthly fee, you go to a meeting for either half of a day or a full day every month, and then you have a one-on-one coaching session with a coach. And that's been helpful in adding a layer of additional accountability to keeping me on track. But as far as your question, to go back in time, it's hard. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think about.
If you don't have any advice, then that's a good thing.
Well, I don't feel like I don't have any. I mean, most of the advice that I would give myself back then are things that I've heard at some point when I hit a roadblock. When I hit a roadblock, laying off one of my first employees was super hard, but I knew it wasn't a good fit from pretty early on. And a lot of business people say this, hire slow, fire fast, and we're now at a point where we hire slow at JB Media, sort of. I mean, I still, we've evolved to a process where we have group interviews and more feedback than me just picking somebody and saying, so we're gonna hire. For the most part, but there were some people that I hired that I continued working with, trying to bring along for a really, really long time, and it never ended up working out. And I think if I had been more intuitive and followed my instinct earlier with certain people, that would have, it's really hard to let someone go the longer they're with the company. It's a very emotional thing. Especially when you run an organization that's very congenial and friendly, and there's a lot of friendship between people. So yeah, that would be one.
Trust your gut. Trust
your gut, and be really, really careful with choosing the right fit, cultural fit. Right. I also didn't define our company values or mission statement early on. And we're still working on our mission statement right now, but we're still working on our values, actually. We came up with some values early last year. We have way too many. We're trying to refine them down. and get them more clear and clarified. But I think just that process was helpful for me. I know it was an intense process, and maybe that process wasn't even handled the best way it could have. But for me, just like, because it sets like a sort of a direction for us, and it's like we're getting increasingly clear on it with, like, we want to work with companies that are socially and environmentally responsible. And the filters and definitions of that will be more clear over time. But that's, I mean, we didn't set that path. I realized that in 2014 when we were taking on work just to cover the payroll. And one of my mentors in the room told me one time, a couple years ago, we were out to lunch and we were walking back to the car. He's like, the number one accomplishment I think I have had in business, he's been very successful, was never missing a payroll and never like having to deliver, people's paychecks late. And I haven't had to do that, and I've gotten close a few times. And one of the reasons I haven't had to do that is because I've worked really, really, really hard from early on, from other people's advice, to build up the credit the company has. So we have way more bank relationships than we need and way more credit than we need. So I have 6 months of business expenses backstopped, below zero. I could go below zero for 6 months or more without ever hitting the back of the credit. I have 4 credit cards, 3 lines of credit, multiple loans, operating loans. And I think that the books I've read about growth say every 6 months go to your banks and ask them to double or increase it 25%. And I've done that, and they've never said no yet. I'm getting to the point where, like, they want to see more financials, they want to see better reporting. Like, I'm hitting the limits of personal borrowing, but not because I'm running out of that capital. It's just like it's there as protection behind the company. It feels like it creates. I still get anxious when our numbers hit red, but knowing that there's like a lot below it, where I could go farther red, it makes it less stressful. I mean, if you hit red and you don't have credit, then you're going to bounce a check. But if you hit red and you have $50,000 or $100,000 in credit below it, and we were $5,000 under for a couple of weeks, now it's anxiety producing. I actually get panicky about it, but it's just because because usually it's as a result of, like, we've been going down and down and down for several months. And I'm like, is it going to turn around? Because if it keeps at this trajectory for another 6 months, we're going to be broke. But it's like, that's usually what gets me to gut check, like, what's going wrong, what we need to fix in the system,
Yeah.
But it's like...
That leads right into the next question, actually. I'm going to stop you there. So what are some big mistakes that you could have avoided in the process of getting JB Media and the Institute to where it's at right now?
I don't really feel like we've made any big mistakes. I mean, I think that the fact that the economy has been, like, they say, like, a business isn't really tested until the economy crumbles underneath it. So I've been riding ahead of, but not that far ahead of, the growth rate of the economy for the last 5 years. And so I know that. And I know that this business model that I have with the agency side of the business is not resilient to economic downturn. Like, anyone who's been in marketing in Asheville over the last 30 years will tell you that anytime the bottom falls out of the economy, the money stops. It just stops. I mean, that's not just Asheville, but I think it affects here more than other places, because we don't have big corporate companies that drop to a lower level. We just have freeze. And that will put a business out. And I talked to so many people that are 10 or 15 years older than me, who used to have an agency with 10 or 15 people, who will refuse to hire an employee. They will refuse. They do 100% freelance contract labor and do 100% outsource all their labor, because they've been through that and they do never want to do it again. They don't care if they only make $75,000 a year as the owner of a virtual agency. They are not willing to take that risk again. And I have the luxury of never having to go through that yet. So I have the optimism that it's not going to happen, but we all know that it's not always the local microeconomy that causes something like that to happen. I mean, one of my mentors in Florida had a career has one of the most amazing up and down careers that I know of. But he and a group of investors bought a German aerospace company in 1990, 2008 for $65 million, and he was the director of vice president of marketing, CMO. They had grown the company to $2.4 billion by the summer of 2011. They had 25,000 employees, and his ownership in the company was worth $500 million. And 9/11 happened, and they were out of business in 90 days. They laid off 100% of their employees, and his net worth went from $600 million down to $100 million. And the owner of the company went from $1 billion to nothing in 90 days. Now, so like a company like ours would struggle in a situation like that. So for a number of reasons, I've developed the Institute business as, in some ways, it's a hedge against that, because in high unemployment, training and career transition becomes a bigger market.
Right.
So the Institute business has a lot of opportunity in the extreme ends of the economic market. So at peak employment, companies want to train their staff and get the most out of their employees, and there's not very many people in the market available to do technical skills that take years of experience to develop, because all the people with years of experience are hired, and new people need training. But then if the economy drops off a cliff, a lot of those people with years of experience in a parallel field, or their experience is a little bit outdated, they've been in like a kind of a steady job for a long time, and now they need new skills, they're going to reinvest some of their savings or go and even borrow money or get credit to buy some training. And modular training that doesn't take 4 years is appealing. It's only $1,000 to get our online certificate. We'd have a lot of people in that market, in either of those extremes. And then the agency does really well on the up. It's when companies are scared to hire because they've just gone through the recession. And that's how we were really fortunate when we started. That we were starting when companies were looking to spend again, but they were a little cautious to hire. So they were like looking to outsource. And what we're seeing now is that a lot of companies are looking to hire now. And so we're getting less contracts because they're bringing it in-house. So we're developing new services to support those kind of businesses. We're trying to develop a coaching service where we offer 4 to 8 hours a month of like direct fractional CMO type of consulting for the internal team with our online school subscription. And then if they need a marketing research plan, or they need a little help with their content editing or some more content writing, they add on our agency services as needed. But the baseline is like $500 to $1,000 a month, which is right now below our minimum retainer for our agency services.
Right.
So that is, I think, a service we can launch as we reach peak employment, which would fall off the cliff if the economy were to collapse.
Yeah. It seems like a very intelligent decision to start the Institute then, kind of substitute in case something like that were to occur.
Yeah, it's all the Institute. So for those of you who don't know, I'll give a little bit of history of how we started the Institute. So we've always tried to help our clients by training them, coaching them, offering workshops. Early on, we would do like an SEO workshop, and we'd invite all of our clients and say, for an extra $200, you can come to this training in our conference room, and we get 4 or 5 clients to come, and we'd also invite freelancers we were working with, we were sending work to, so they would be more knowledgeable of our processes and do free training for the community. And we would invite nonprofits we like to come for free, and then we also, there was a moment in the first year or the second year when I had this client that we kept circling back to them, be like, "Are you ready to work with us?" And they kept saying, "We can't afford you," And I was like, "Well, you need," and they like, but we need this. And I was like, "Well, why don't you get an intern from UNC Asheville?" And they were like, we couldn't afford, we don't know how to train or manage the intern. And they were working out of their home. They're like, "We don't really have a place for them to work. I don't really feel comfortable with them working in my house." I was like, "All right, well, how about this? How about we put out the internship, and we recruit the intern, we vet the intern, we train them up on what we do, we have them work on your project, and we charge you half of what we normally would charge, and we do the same amount of work." And they were like, "Yeah, that sounds good." So we did that. And we did that 3 months in the fall with an undergrad UNC Asheville intern, charged them $1,000 a month for a bunch of content versus $2,000, which is what's our profitable price point. And then the spring we brought on a Western Carolina grad student. So I paid the grad student basically minimum wage for 2 months, the 3 months to do. he was so efficient and such a good writer that he was doing all the work for the internship in 5 or 6 hours a week, and then he had 15 more hours in his internship. So we gave him a whole other project that was paying $2,000 a month. And he was able to do 80% of that work, and even a little bit more. So he was bringing in over $3,000 a month during his internship. And so that was an example of like, we are training someone, providing a service at a discount. And then we had a call from this big corporate that I didn't even know was in this area. It's called UPM Raffle Attack. And no one's probably ever heard of them except for maybe 1 or 2 people. Anyone? No? Yeah? Krista? They are a $3 billion company I think they're out of Sweden. And they are, in the United States, they have their America's headquarters over North and South America and Canada is in Fletcher. They have 350,000 square feet of warehouse. And they have 25 employees, and most of them are European. But they have a few local people. And what they do is they make label stock. They make the back, all different types of labels. They make security labels for the military. They make battery labels for Intel. They make clear shrink labels for soap and everything else, and wine bottle labels and all these different types of high-tech labels. They don't make the labels. They make the printing. They make the stock. They sell them to commercial printers. Well, they were like, we need a social media strategy, and I was like, no, you don't. But I met with them anyway, and realized that their European division had spent $60,000 on a social media strategy, and they wanted to Americanize it. And I was like, all right, sure, we can do that. And we quoted them $15,000 to do it, and they said yes. And then they were like, but we want to hire someone in-house to manage this strategy. And it was more than just social media. It was Google AdWords and LinkedIn marketing and some things that they really needed. And they wanted to be told that they didn't need to do Facebook and LinkedIn, or Facebook and Twitter, which we told them. And they were like, we want to hire someone, but we're worried about somebody that fit our culture. We have this unusual European culture. We have 6 weeks off in the summer, and then we work really hard the rest of the year. And we're worried that if we hire someone from around here, and they also need to have this industry knowledge. And they're like, can we find that person in Asheville? And I was like, well, why don't you find someone that has your culture and your industry knowledge, and then send them to us for an apprenticeship for 3 months. We'll charge you $3,000 a month to train this person in our office. And when they were like, they lit up like, that sounds like awesome. And so when they left, I was like, that is really scalable. I was like, why would we do 15 apprentices? That would be a lot to manage. Why don't we just build a curriculum that we could run several times a year, that we could just have 15 students in at a time, or 20, and teach them how to do this stuff in like a very structured way. So we decided to do that. It took us a year to launch it. We launched it the following summer with 10 students, and we've since had 120 go through our local program.
Wow.
But then we decided to put it online.
Yeah.
So we basically have, in the last year, launched an online version which people can take from anywhere in the country or the world. We've had a couple of foreign students, but so far I've had about 80 students, and about 60% of them or 70% of them have been in Asheville still for the online. It's just a less expensive, more flexible option, but we're starting to see more out-of-town students. We have a new partnership with a company in Raleigh that thinks they can send us about 20 students a year. I'm working on a partnership with an organization in San Francisco. They probably generate 100 students a year, and then just keep on finding those bigger partnerships.
Partnerships are great things to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my next question would be actually about the teaching. Are there any solid words of advice that you could give us on social media, and what we might be able to do that we're not aware of currently to promote, advertise, market?
I think if you're communicating with business to consumer marketing, that there's never been an opportunity in the history of marketing like Facebook advertising. And my friend Edwin in the back is nodding his head. He's been helping me with social media strategy, writing social media strategies for clients for the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And so it's amazing the level of targeting. People don't realize just how much data that Facebook has about people. They have every consumer transaction that you make. They know everything about you because you put it all in your profile. You put your age, where you went to high school and college, where you live. That you put in what bands you like, what entertainment you like, who you're friends with, what political party you're affiliated with, depending on who you like on Facebook. I like Barack Obama and Elizabeth Warren. That tells something about who I am. And I like certain musicians and certain movies. And And then they can connect my name with my credit history and know what I buy. And so they can market, and also my job title. You can go on Facebook and say, I want to target people in Asheville between 35 and 50 who are women who have marketing in their job title, and who like these 3 political candidates or whatever. It gets down. It gets like you can get down to like 15 people. You can say this is going to only be seen by these 15 people, or this 500 people, or this 4 million people. It's how tight you target it. You can do logic like they have to like this, and this, but not this. So you can remove people from the list by just doing the not like or not interested in kind of thing. And so that you can then put something in their news feed. And you can track if they click on it, and you can track if they take an action on it. And you can track, in Facebook, if you put the tracking right, through the end conversion, Facebook will know who converted and what, within your target audience, specifically what they were, and then they retarget everything more and more toward the people who actually take action automatically through the algorithm. So it's just mind-boggling.
Wow.
And I had my first training this morning from Edwin on LinkedIn advertising. It's not nearly as robust, and it's 5 times as expensive or 10 times as expensive. So unless you're doing B2B marketing with it, and if you're marketing like maybe even our classes, but high-end professional services, you can get away with that on LinkedIn. But if you're trying to get people to buy your T-shirt or your restaurant's food or anything, your concert tickets, Facebook's the way to do it, and it's the most cost-effective. You can reach 1,000 people on Facebook for between $1 and $3. We did for my father's company, which is a holistic conference business, last fall. So I spent the last 4 or 5 years building up a network of other bloggers and influencers that are in alignment with the event. They talk about similar topics. And so we have 5 of them. They have a combined Facebook audience of about 1 million fans, and convinced the conference to invest $1,000 in sending them, these influencers that they're working with, $100 each, twice, to do a boosted post to their audience about a contest where people could put their email address and enter to win a $4,000 prize package, including 2 tickets to this conference. And for $2,000, we got 10,000 email addresses of people who were very passionate about this industry, and we were able to do an email blast to them the week after the contest was over, which was kind of uncomfortably close to the conference. We still got 10 people to sign up for the conference. It's an average ticket price of close to $2,000, $1,500, something like that. So it paid off just on that first email, but now those people are in the list, and they're getting our quarterly emails and our reminders about deadlines. And we're going to do it again this time, but in July or August, so that we'll have a lot longer before the conference next year to market to them. So I think Facebook advertising is like, it's for the foreseeable future, is the very best marketing choice for business to consumer companies.
Well, you pretty much answered my last question, I think, with that statement. If people only remember one thing from tonight, what do you want them to remember?
Well, I don't know if that's the thing I want them to remember.
Facebook marketing?
I mean, I think that the power of, like, as an entrepreneur, I think the number one thing that I've used over and over again is that even though I'm in an industry that is rapidly changing, and it's intimidating how fast it's changing, I'm still making business decisions that have been made for 30 or 40 years regularly by business owners, and I don't have to lose sleep over decisions. Like, some of the decisions are hard, but getting 4 or 5 people's opinion and talking it out with them makes it not like all in my own head. And so that takes, like, doing that is like probably the best advice I could give for an entrepreneur. That's an entrepreneurial tip, but it's the best advice I can give for entrepreneurs.
Mentorship, making sure you've got people to reach out to.
Yeah, and diversity. I mean, you want people with conservative and liberal. You want people that have financial experience, legal experience, and like pure entrepreneurs who just go for the opportunity and just don't say no. And there's a very big difference between a very entrepreneurial person, the way they think about decisions, and someone who's in finance or has an MBA, who is much more logical and tactical in how they make their decisions and how much risk they're tolerant of. So I'll ever just take one person's advice. I'll like hear them out and then I hear someone else out, and I test myself, check myself, and then I come to my own conclusion.
Awesome. So if anybody has any questions, this would be a good time to.
How do you discover those mentors?
Well,
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Oh, did you?
the question is, how do I discover those mentors? Well, let me talk about a few different ones. So when I put together my initial list, I called it my advisory board. And I thought about, who do I know who, I thought two things when I did my advisory board. Business experience, three things: business experience, marketing experience, and network. How many people do they know they can introduce me to if they think I'm doing good work? So business experience was, and marketing experience came from Craig McCanch, who started Mojo Co-working and native marketing, and
That's great.
became my landlord. I moved into Mojo. Business experience was Bob Dunn, who's at Mountain BizWorks, who's my business coach. Network, Pam Lewis, who was at Advantage West at the time, who started Venture Asheville. Business experience, networking. I tried to connect with my mentor in Philadelphia especially the business knowledge he had. And then my friend Kevin Schwartz, who was the director of dining, or assistant director of dining at the Grove Park Inn, who had a network, connection to a potential major client, and I knew that he was very interested in social media, and because I had spoken on several panels where he was the corporate representative of the social media community, and we had hit it off and talked, so I added him to the list, and he, I took him to lunch around Christmas time before I started the company, winter of 2010-11, and asked him to be on the advisory board. He thought about it and emailed me back and said yes. And then in February, he said, I have to recuse myself from your advisory board because I want to introduce you to someone at Grove Park Inn. And that was Craig Madison, who's in the room, who was the CEO of Grove Park Inn. So when I was preparing for that meeting with Craig, I looked him up and I read his resume. I read his biography, and he dropped out of college, I believe, and started a marketing agency. Is that right? Dropped out of college, started a marketing agency in Asheville, grew it up to 30-something people, moved over to Grove Park Inn, worked his way up to CEO, and then corporate, and then has always been in touch with the marketing of all the businesses he's ever worked for or worked with. And I was like, this is a once in a lifetime meeting opportunity for a mentor, because it's just the perfect, he's 25 years ahead of me in somewhat similar trajectory of what I'm looking for. So something about going in knowing that's an opportunity, just tried to bring my A game. I don't know. I mean, I just tried to, be myself, and then we've connected and stayed in touch. And as a point in my business in the beginning of 13, when 45% of all my business was directly a result of Craig's introductions. And more than introductions, I mean, Craig has actually pretty much strong-armed some of his clients into hiring us. I wouldn't say that.
To do what I say.
And to this day, we still have, right now, 30% of our work is either projects that Craig helped us get or projects that project led us to. So there's a guy out in Cherokee who Craig's a mentor of also, who introduced us to our current largest client, and I'm actually paying him a commission, but we wouldn't be in that position if it wasn't for Craig. And then also but we had to do good work. We had to do good work for Craig. We had to do good work for the clients in Cherokee, and you can't just have a network if you don't say what you're going to do and don't follow through and bring that passion and do the good work. It's going to fall flat really fast. So
your work represents you, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So hire badasses is also.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Mandy's the director of content. Yeah, I mean, you have to get out of your own way. The biggest thing with running the company is increasingly delegating. The biggest gorilla or weight off my back was when I hired my first project manager on Labor Day of 2011. She started, and she's still with the company and has gotten 2 promotions up into a leadership position now. But like when I could go to work and not have to respond to every client email, and I could say, here's our most tedious work that I'm doing, keyword research. Can I teach you how to do keyword research? Because it takes 10 hours to do it well or more for a client. And I was just like selling clients and then like dreading doing it. And so she's really good at it and she loves doing it. And now she has someone who she's hired and trained, or we've hired to work with her and is trained, who does the overflow for her. And and just like I don't even see the work. I don't even see what they're doing. I just check the final work real quickly, and it's always good. And Mandy's work, I don't even read. I mean, this is not an insult. I usually read the stuff that you write for SoCap a week after it goes onto the site, and it's amazing work. And then not having to worry about that, not have to worry about if it's ever going to be late either. Like over the course of the history of the company, we've almost never delivered anything late, which is kind of a little bit rare in our industry, which is part of why clients clients will pay for quality, speed, and balance that with their budgets. And we're usually quality and we're usually on time. But we're also really honest about how long things are going to take. A lot of companies will be like, we can do that in a week and sell the project, and then knowing that it'll take 3 or 4 weeks, and they've already set themselves up for a bad relationship from the beginning, or they don't really know how long it's going to take, and they think they can do it faster than they can.
Ballpark it.
Yeah. So fortunately, what we do is stuff that we can relatively well predict, and I try to build buffers in, and I'm getting better at that. I'm like, one of the things I'm working on right now is like, our sales volume has been high the last couple of months, and I've been like telling people about projects the week before, like the week I sign them, and tell them we're starting next week. And so I need to start putting in some more buffers between the sign date and the start date, so that we have a little time to like ease in and make sure we don't need more help, or can we really handle all this work we have.
Can you speak to anything new and creative that you've seen in the social media space that may be the next big thing?
Snapchat is growing like wildfire. It's insane. What are the numbers at, Edwin? Users? 100 million daily, right?
Yeah.
More?
Yeah.
Very, very fast. Facebook is adding, Instagram is really ramping up their business services right now.
Microsoft.
What?
Didn't Microsoft invest?
No, they bought LinkedIn.
Oh, they bought LinkedIn.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with LinkedIn. Microsoft bought LinkedIn last week for $26.2 billion. That, I don't know what that's going to do. They're not going to change their business model very much, I don't think. I think it was a strategic acquisition that Microsoft basically bought the customers from LinkedIn, and I don't think they're going to change the operating structure at all of LinkedIn. I don't think LinkedIn is going to continue to iterate and develop better advertising platforms. Facebook just rolled out a bunch more like integrated content types, so you can do like a lot more what are called carousel ads, which are ads with multiple images, or collage ads with like different types of content in one ad, or you can like kind of scroll through. And that's something that makes their content their advertising more dynamic. And where the user can kind of choose like from multiple products that are featured or multiple stories. And that just empowers the user a lot more with the content integration. Video is just incredibly blowing up. Like Twitter, Instagram, they've all lengthened the amount of time you can do video on their platforms from like 6 seconds and 18 seconds to like 1 minute and 90 seconds respectively, like recently, and that's still rolling out. So yeah, I think people getting more comfortable with video marketing is going to be critical. It's going to get increasingly competitive, increasingly like overwhelming to look at newsfeed that's like mostly video, but there'll be obviously tools that will be developed to help filter that. But yeah, I think video marketing is going to be increasingly important.
Any last questions? No? Okay. Well, once again, thank you very much for speaking this evening. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.